Next, I'd like to welcome to the stage Sanjeev Chadha, who's the CEO for Asia, Middle East and North Africa for Pepsico. He's going to discuss what the company is doing in terms of making sure its water use is efficient and how it's limiting the negative impact on local communities. It's obviously an important issue. So I'd like to welcome Sanjeev Chadha to the stage.
Good morning. Thanks, Andrew, for that introduction. And it's my pleasure and honor to talk about a case study that we in Pepsico are really very proud of. But before I get to the case study, a few words about our company, Pepsico. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard about Pepsi, but perhaps some of you are not aware of some of the other products that are in our portfolio. Great brands like Quaker Oats, like Tropicana juices, like Gatorade sports drinks, like Aquafina hydration waters, Lipton iced teas, Doritos, tortilla chips, Lay's, of course, Sunbites, baked snacks, and many others as well. And in Pepsico, we have a really, really long and big history in this region. In fact, we call the Gulf, and we're really proud to call the UAE our home. Dubai is our headquarters, my headquarters, not just for the Middle East, but as Andrew mentioned, for a pretty large part of the world, for Asia Pacific, the Middle East, and North Africa as well. Which is a sizable business. It's about over a $6 billion business. We have over 25,000 employees. We operate in 40 countries and have over 300 production facilities in this part of the world. Now, water is obviously critical for most, if not all, activities around the world, domestic as well as commercial. And so is the case with us in Pepsico. Water is an absolutely essential ingredient in our manufacturing processes and obviously in our products as well. So I actually have a question for you. And my question is, what do you think Pepsico uses the maximum amount of water in? Can I take a guess? In Aquafina? No. I heard agriculture somewhere, and that is absolutely right. So something which is a bit lesser known about Pepsico is we are actually more of a food company than we are a beverage company. And obviously, we grow a lot of vegetables, fruits, and grains for the various products and the products that go into those, the agricultural products that go into those as well. So absolutely, agriculture, like for the rest of the world, is the largest consumption area for water as far as Pepsico is concerned. And guess what? It is the most water inefficient. And there, a gentleman asked about reducing consumption or reducing demand. The obvious massive opportunity is in agriculture. There's an opportunity everywhere, but I would say the sizable opportunity is in agriculture. So, being a large organization working in about 200 countries all over the world, and honestly being a very large consumer of water, and also having a fair amount of expertise because of our business, we realize and recognize our responsibility in our world, which is getting, unfortunately, to be more and more water stressed in more and more parts of the world. So what is our responsibility? In simple terms, in my simple terms, I'm not a technical person, it is simply to reduce on the one hand and replenish on the other. Reduce what? Reduce the amount of water across our entire supply chain on the one hand, and then use our expertise. And we have a fair amount of expertise in-house, but importantly, we have a tremendous amount of expertise in the ecosystem. And I'm sure organizations like are represented out here to use their benefit to replenish as much water, if not all the water, that we consume. So those are our two key focus areas. And frankly, we've been working a lot on these two important focus areas around the world and have been fortunate over the years to gain a fair amount of recognition from different organizations and around the world as well for our integrated water stewardship program. But I have to tell you, the one I personally am most proud of is this one. It's the Stockholm Industry Water Award, which I had the honor of accepting on behalf of PepsiCo globally a couple of years back. And this award acknowledged the 26% global reduction in water usage in our global operations since 2006, which, as you can imagine, given our scale, translates to a few trillion liters of water reduced or of water saved. And what I'm proud about is that my part of the world, we call it AMENA, Asia Pacific, Middle East, and North Africa, actually reduced water consumption by as much as 50% in our manufacturing operations in this period of time. 50%. The opportunity was greater, and I really am proud to say our team's passion was equally matched with that opportunity. But what caught the Stockholm Award jury's attention was something else. And it's the title of my presentation, something called Positive Water Balance. So what is this? So Positive Water Balance started in 2007. And it started with a question which we asked ourselves. And we said, reducing water consumption is great, it's important, it's all very well. But what if we could add back water into our ecosystem, not just reduce what we are taking out? So not only the debit, work on the debit, but work on the credit as well. So much so that we could balance the water supply, if you will. Add back as much as we are pulling out. And if we all do that, well, we've got a water-secure world in simple terms. And that was the idea. We called this idea positive water balance, a pretty audacious thought at that time, which really acknowledged that as a responsible corporate citizen, we have to work on the credit side as well as the debit side of the water equation. And I'd like to share with you two real stories about positive water balance, which I'm really, really proud of. And they're about Jordan and India. But let me start with Jordan first. Now, Jordan, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, is one of the most water-stressed countries in the world. Now, PepsiCo has a very well-established business in Jordan. We have a long history with Jordan. And given the deteriorating water situation in Jordan, we first looked in-house, within the fence, at our own manufacturing operations, which are in the city of Amman. And there, by using wastewater treatment and other water reclamation technologies, you'll be happy to hear that we reduced our water intensity by as much as 43% over the past decade. The water saved is the equivalent of about the annual hot water usage by roughly 7,000 Jordanians in 1 year. But our team in Jordan knew that that was not enough. And so they forged a strong partnership, and you'll hear this theme across my presentation of partnerships. A strong partnership, in this case, with the Ministry of Water and Irrigation to create opportunities to replenish watersheds across the country. And this brought together the government's reach and understanding of local needs with PepsiCo's know-how and resources as well. And the result was the fact that we built 4 successful projects that are helping to tackle and contribute to tackling Jordan's intense water problems. They include a reclamation pond, they include check dams, and a treatment unit in Wadi Zagaik to process non-potable well water so that it meets the drinking water standards as well. And you'll be happy to know that we have replenished more water than we removed from Jordan's aquifers in the last 3 years, as verified by a third party as well. So it's not me talking about it, but it is actually audited and verified as well. And we have made a commitment to the citizens of Jordan to continue to do so in the future. So that's the Jordan story. Let me switch to India. And in India, the story is actually even more impressive given, well, the simple size of the country, the size of the problem, and indeed the size of our business as well. We have a multi-billion-dollar business in India. And yes, we did achieve positive water balance in the entire country of India as well. To be precise, we replenished 17 billion liters of water on an average in each of the last 3 years against our total consumption as a corporate of about 7 billion liters. So think about that. We were able to replenish actually 2.5 times more water than we consumed. And I think that is, I'm personally really proud about that. And I really believe that if we all can work towards that, as organizations, as businesses, as partners, and we can have a lot more brighter water future to look forward to. Now, I'd like to talk about 2 examples of how we got to that result. And the first one is this one on the slide called direct seeding of rice. It involves rice. I'm sure you're aware, rice is one of the highest consumers of water. Can anyone hazard a guess? How many liters of water it takes to produce 1 kilogram of rice? One guess from the audience. No prizes or punishment for the wrong answer. Sorry? 90 liters? Sounds like an auction. 3,000 liters. Think about that. 3,000 liters of water for every kilogram of rice produced. So that is the sad part in agriculture, but that is the great opportunity in agriculture. If 70% of the world's water is being used in agriculture, imagine the opportunity we have in that direction. So what happened there? So we challenged our scientists to figure out a different way. Guess why so much water is used in agriculture in paddy? If you think about a picture of a paddy field, what do you see? You see it flooded with water. But guess what? It really is not required. It is a traditional practice which continued over the years. And today, it is not required. You've got herbicides and pesticides and so on, which do the job which water was doing earlier. The reason why it was flooded was because they put in saplings and they wanted to kill any weeds suffocate the weeds. And that is why they flooded the fields with water, when water scarcity was not an issue. It is absolutely not required. So our scientists introduced a different technique called, very simply, direct seeding of rice. You seed the rice in the land, use the right technology, and the results were amazing. The results are they eliminated the need to flood the fields, saved 30% of water used, reduced greenhouse gases by 70%, increased farmers' profit per acre. It required less labor as well. And today we are working with rice farmers across 4 states of the country to implement and see how rapidly we can accelerate direct seeding for rice. The size of the prize is so big that if half of that country does direct seeding for rice, only half, we will save more water than is used by the entire industry in India combined. All industry. Okay, so that's a second story. And now let me turn to a small village in western India called Paitan, which I first personally visited about 8 years back. I was based in India at that time, and Paitan was in very bad shape. Water was scarce, wells had dried up, the fields were parched, they were reduced to 1 crop a year. This 1 crop was sugarcane, which produced much needed income, but it was a water-intensive crop. And they weren't able to conserve enough water for a second crop. As a result, incomes were down, they had to walk long distances, the women, to fetch water. Children could not attend school because they were going to fetch water 2 hours away. And our NGO partner, a company called ADI, did an analysis, and we were surprised to learn that the village actually got adequate rainfall. That was not the problem. The problem was that the water was simply getting washed away through 3 natural waterways. And the solution was amazingly simple as well. We built check dams, some 13 check dams in partnership with ADI and the local municipality. Water was channeled into 100 wells in the area. A self-help group was set up to maintain the infrastructure. And when I personally again visited Paitan, just a few months later, the next year, I was absolutely stunned at the dramatic difference a few months can make. The wells had water in them. The aquifers were being recharged. And a year later, for the first time in 6 years, Paitan sowed their second crop again. And they do so till today. Now they've diversified into vegetables and fruits. And I can tell you, the smiles on the villagers in Paitan is worth $1 million. Now, we learned many lessons along the way in these early partnerships, and we are using those lessons across the board. Our success in Payton was enabled by a partnership with the village people, the village residents. It was critical to engage the village councils, training residents and funding empowerment programs so that they could self-sustain the progress that was made. And very importantly, where water has been a free and plentiful resource for generations, but is now scarce, we have to educate and shift the local community to a much more conservative mindset. And I think that's a very critical task that we have amongst the citizens all around the world, and certainly here in the GCC as well. Now, one of the key requisites we faced in some critiques we faced in some cases was that our replenishment efforts were not at the same place as the place where we were withdrawing water from. So if water replenishment is in Delhi, well, the people in Mumbai are not benefited from that. And that got us, as a result, to relook at a whole positive water balance, or what we call positive water impact strategy, to ensure that we are focusing on local watersheds, where the real problem is. Where we are drawing water is where we are replenishing water as well. And this shows basically, sorry for the eye chart, but talks about how we do it, focus on reducing water in our direct manufacturing operations, working with our agricultural partners, and focusing on local watersheds, and then sharing ideas, learnings, and picking up best practices from conferences like this so that we can arrive at more innovative solutions and take it forward from there. And indeed, one example is this one, the example of the humble potato. Okay? Now, this is an example where we develop technology that creates a closed-loop system. Our potato chips come from this humble potato. But guess what? This potato is 80% water. So what we've done is, the scientists have done is, they have used this closed loop. We have equipment now that captures the water out of the potato. We reuse it to clean the next batch of potatoes, keep them hydrated as they go through the cutting process, and then get to clean the machinery at the end of that as well. Pretty cool, huh? So our vision is not to have a potato chip plant with a water supply. Just switch off the water taps, and I hope we'll be able to achieve it one day. Now, this technique, second one, is something that we call precision farming, which is delivering savings of an amazing 50% in terms of water usage in the best case. And it's enabled by something called iCrop. It's a web-based technology that we perfected in the UK and are exporting now around the world. Now, iCrop uses sensors which get real-time data in terms of humidity, wind, soil, composition, etc., to recommend exactly the right amount of water needed for that crop on that day in those conditions, and therefore reduce consumption. But here is an exciting example from next door, from Saudi Arabia. We also grow potatoes in Saudi. Some of the best potatoes in the world come from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and for the products that we make and sell out there. Now, given the water challenges there, we have been working really hard in terms of reducing water consumption by as much as 65% over the last decade. But here is a very exciting experiment which is happening as we speak in Saudi. Now, think about this, and we're using science to do this. It's, imagine spreading a biodegradable polymer, like a blanket, on the agricultural field. And the polymer has the quality of retaining about 400 times the water as the weight of the polymer. And that is enabling the roots to suck just the right amount of water at the right amount of time and make water efficiency much, much higher. So initial results are showing a 30% improvement in terms of water efficiency in our fields in Saudi Arabia as we speak. Very, very exciting. Very, very exciting indeed. And getting in higher yields as well on top of that. Now, all these, let me end, all these examples are frankly part of our philosophy in Pepsico, which we call performance with purpose, which is simply recognizing that any company like ours can only succeed in the long term if our communities succeed in which we operate. And therefore, what we are striving to do is ensuring that sustainability is not a CSR activity. It is integral to our business strategy. By helping our communities, we are helping ourselves, help our community. So it's a sort of a virtuous cycle, if you will. And we've actually recently announced our performance with purpose goals for the next decade. And basically the idea is to substantially increase our efforts to improve the products that we sell, to protect our collective planet, and to empower people around the world in order to really contribute solutions to our shared challenges. And we have specific goals on water on the planet, and two ones which I'll call out are, the first goal and our commitment is to replenish 100% of the water that we consume in all water-stressed areas around the world. 100%. The second goal is to enable the access of safe drinking water to 25 million people. Right now, we are at about 8 or 9 million at this point in time. And we're very excited about it, and we're really committed to achieve these goals as well. 3 last lessons I'd like to leave you with, our own learnings, our humble learnings. The first is obviously that water scarcity can be debilitating. But here is the good news. Each one of us can contribute to the solution. And we must contribute to the solution. The best part is, as you saw, many of these solutions are not rocket science. They're simple. They're actually low cost as well. Innovation has a very critical role to play, though. Second, let's make a big impact on big things, things which really matter, which will change our world for the better. And the third is really the power of partnerships. I really believe in those. What we achieved in Pepsico, frankly, would not have been possible without the great partners that we worked with. Governments, local residents, non-government organizations, scientists, and obviously the passion of people who are wedded to the cause as well. So, and it is really crucial, I really want to say this, that unfortunately, while there's great work on water going on around the world, unfortunately, it is not translating into a positive impact of our problem. And I think our challenge collectively is to translate these small pools of excellence into a tsunami of positive change, an ocean of positive change, so that we can work towards a better future and a better water-secure future for the world. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks, Andrew, for the opportunity. Do we have time for a couple of questions? Be happy to answer any questions or suggestions. Please.
Hello. Really great talk. My name is Bakor. I'm from Saudi Arabia, and I was very impressed with the farm fields. But I'm also questioning its sustainability, and I don't mean to rain on your parade, pun unintended, but how is it going to be sustainable in the long term, considering that the water source is mostly aquifers?
So the reality is, you're right. In a large part of the world, and certainly in the kingdom, there is a tremendous amount of water scarcity. So we are working on 2 things. One is, as you saw, a lot of technology and efforts to keep on reducing, but obviously you're still consuming water. And you're probably aware of the Saudi government's goal down the line to really look very tightly at high water consumption, high water intensity crops. Even today, the kingdom does not allow export of products, packaged products. So export of agricultural produce. Tomorrow, I suspect that will change into even more stricter guardrails and guidelines. And we are working very closely with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on that front. Please. There's a mic coming up.
Thank you. Jamal Omar from Saudi Arabia. My question is, have you tried using reused water, treated water, in growing those crops? Or there's a health issue in that regard?
No, not in Saudi Arabia, and honestly, I do not know why, but we do use reused water in many of our fields across the world as well. We do. And honestly, I'm not sure exactly what the status in the Saudi Arabia is. I'll be happy to share with you once I find out about that. But I think reuse of water absolute essential, right? Not just in agriculture, but for other uses as well. There's one great example which comes to my mind is the Singapore one, where through, and you're familiar with that, right? Through membrane technology and so on, they introduced something called new water. And even for consumption, for water consumption, they have packages and bottled water, and they do a great job. I think a lot of it is a social issue and a psychological issue as well. And I was impressed with the work that the government of Singapore is doing on that front in terms of training the children, spending a day in the museum and so on, training them about a longer-term issue related to water. For agriculture in particular. Appreciate that. Can we have one last question, Andrew?
Thank you. Klaus Konzelmann from Nestle. And very inspiring presentation. I mean, even a competitor is being inspired by your leading activities here. Just one question. You mentioned Jordan, which obviously is one of the most water-stressed countries with non-renewable water resources. Did I understand correctly that if you withdraw non-renewable water that is highly saline and make it potable, that you count that towards your positive water balance?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, and thanks, Andrew.